What's going on, Illumineers, and welcome back to the Madhouse. And today is pretty exciting because I'm showing you 13 decks that did exceptionally well this past weekend. Decks that you can take if you wanted to copy pasta, win your locals, practice with them, get ready for your set champs, whatever it may be. We're looking at decks that did really well at the CCS, the Charlie Collectible Show 8K, that turned into a 10K, the 2K that was on Sunday, and also Red Saber Games put on an Azurite C triple case event, and we're going to look at the top 4 decks for that one. So whether you're trying to get ready for set champs that are starting soon, the LCQs, the NA LCQs, or the next DLC that we're having, these decks can give you somewhere to start, something you can just, like I said, copy pasta and do really well with. Or you can just look at this list and be like, you know what, this might be what I'm going to face a lot of. So maybe you try and build something off meta to combat this, because off meta stuff, it really challenges people. Things to think about. But with that being said, we're going to start off with the Red Saber Games event. And that first, we're going to show off Shane D. Something to note is the top 4, they all split. So we don't have a first, second, third, fourth. It was a 72-person event put on by Red Saber Games. And first up, we have a red and blue list. Now, right off the bat, we have some pretty spicy stuff going on in this list. We have a Basil, the practice detective. He's a 2/1/1 with support. And then we have Rhea, and she is a 3/3/2. And when you look at this list, it's pretty typical stuff, but these 2 cards are super spicy. And the Rhea first is something we've been seeing a lot of lately, something that people have been testing because it does so much for you. One of the biggest hurdles that Red Blue has to combat right now, other than aggro of course, is how do I get to quest with stuff and it not get blown up by a go-go, right, from green purple. So Rhea kind of helps combat that, because once during your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, you may ready another chosen character of yours. They can't quest for the rest of this turn. So that means that you could say you quest with Tamatoa and then you ink something and you ready the Tamatoa, and now they can't just hit into your Tamatoa and go and gain all this massive lore. Now, they could still Elsa and exert it that way, but it's a little bit harder, it's a little bit more expensive, a little bit more setup is required, and that Rhea is just really doing a lot to combat that. The other thing that you can do is you could just attack multiple things now with Rhea. Like, let's say you have a shark and your shark is ready. You attack something with your shark. You bring back an action. Then maybe you sing with the shark because so you attack with the shark. You bring back an action. Then you ink something. You ready the shark. Then maybe you sing with the shark. Maybe sing a pirate's life. Maybe sing a whatever else, how far I'll go, or maybe you just attack something else and you bring back another action, because Red Blue has to be able to challenge the aggro stuff. They have to be able to do really well into that, and Rhea's just giving them that option to either save their stuff from go-go or to challenge more things, to challenge and sing, whatever it is they need to do. I mean, you could even Rhea to ready your Flaversham so that doesn't get taken out because you need the draw. The other spicy thing is the Basil, or the Basil, however it's pronounced. Let me know. That's support. Huge shout out to Coffin. He's a member of the Rose fam put on by JDRR. He explained this one for me because I got to admit, when I first saw this list, I had no idea why he was here. And essentially, it's kind of like a pseudo Queen of Hearts in that you can now play this card and it challenges into stuff. It makes Tipo something that can challenge into something. It gives, if you have Basil down, you're playing red purple. Now your Maui can take out a castle. It can take out a library with support from Basil. And so it's also just a little goon guy who can take out anything, so it's kind of in place of that Queen of Hearts. So you lose the rush, but you gain some reach from the support, and people might not think about it, but you can also play off a Sail the Azurite C. So maybe you have a lot of card options in your hand. You ink, you double ink that turn, and then you can play a Basil. So now you also have a way to combat the board with that 2/1. So there's just options that Basil gives you that maybe Queen of Hearts doesn't, different lines of play. I really like it. I think it's pretty unique, something that, like I said, I had no idea why it was there. So huge shout out to Coffin for explaining that one for me. Next up on the list, though, we have Christian P, top 4 split again, running a red-purple list. It's a pretty standard list, nothing super special, but I did highlight the fact that he's running to 3 Lady Tremaines, because that's not something you see a lot of. Normally you see more on the Medusa end, and because that Medusa is able to take out more. I think it's really interesting to see 3 Lady Tremaines when Genie is so popular. But I think, the Tremaines gives you more reach into blue, for example, so beat up that matchup even more. But it's a pretty standard list, nothing super unique. We do see only 3 Flynns over 4, and that is interesting in its own case, but at the same time, maybe 3 is a good option where there's so much aggro, so Flynn's not doing much for you anyways. You just want extra reach from other cards. And then, of course, we see the 10 1-drops coming down, 4 brawls, 3 B-preps, and 2 big Sizu. So that's a lot to worry about, especially if the little Sizu lives, and now big Sizu can come down on turn 6 to clear the board. So good list. Only 1 Bell, which when Genie Wars are so popular right now, you'd expect to see 2. But with the Genies and then, of course, the Brawls, Red Purple has a lot of ways to deal with the opposing Genie. So maybe they just don't need that as much as some of the other purple decks do. And my face is way in the way. So get that out of the way. I'm sorry, guys. But yeah. So, going forward, we have Ethan with his deck, and with his, he took a top 4 split. One of the interesting things about this list, and I won't spend a lot of time on any of the Steel Song lists because I have a video coming up talking about a whole bunch of Steel Song lists and what Steel Song's looking like right now, which is crazy. But looking at this list, we have a Gaston, which you don't see a lot of that in the Robin Hood when you see the shift line. Typically, you see the shift line taken out in place of Gaston, but I'm not against it. It offers a lot of interesting lines because now if you're not playing green, if you see Gaston in your hand and you see a whole new world, you could kind of just keep that hand as long as you have Inkables and guarantee that you get a whole new world to refill your hand, because he's also running the 4 daisies. He's running 12 1-drops, which means that he's going to have 1-drops. And if you see like a daisy, then you could go Daisy on 1, Daisy on 2, Gaston on 3, or Smee on 2, Gaston on 3. Like there's a world of opportunity here. You only see the 4 Zeus and the 3 Ursula, which I think is always a little weird because I like to, if I'm playing that many Zeus, I like my Zeuses to meet my Ursulas unless I'm playing the Queen package, but I think 4 Zeus is really needed. I would be interested where you're running shift line, Gastons and Ariels and Ursulas and Naveen, you probably have a lot of opportunity to actually get to use those and it not being an issue. But a really good list with that spicy Gaston. Really like to see it. Like I said, we'll talk a lot about Steel Song in another video coming very, very soon. Next up, though, we have Adam Q with a fan favorite, Blue Steel. And looking at this Blue Steel list, there's quite a bit of spicy in it. There's a lot of stuff in here that we're not seeing combined into one Steel Song list right now. So first off, it's a no wheel list. So no whole new world in this list. We're seeing, of course, the Ariel plus the Dime package, but the spicy in here is you're seeing this Robin Hood, the 6-drop 4/4/2. When you play this character, if an opponent has more cards in their hand, you get to draw a card, and during your turn, this character gains evasive. Being a 4/4, he challenges Genie, and he lives to tell a story. So that's really cool. He quests for 2, and he's inkable. So even if you're not playing purple, you have a good card that maybe just quests for 2, or he just inks, or he draws you a card, which isn't the end of the world either. And when you play him against purple, you're most likely behind in cards anyways. So there's a lot of threats there. We don't see a lot of them, but I'm excited to see it, and I'd be interested to see if we start seeing more of him with Genie being so popular. But the other thing we have is the Arthur. He's the 7-cost uninkable. He's a 3/6/3. He's a shift 5, which doesn't matter. There's no shift. But when you play this character, chosen character gets challenger +2 and resist +2 and can challenge ready characters this turn. you play Arthur on something, and that something is decimating everything. So imagine you play this on the Simba, for example, the Gantu, the Chinpo, the Tinkerbell. Like, you're going to be able to take out anything at that point. A really good option would to play it on something like Robin Hood, where you could challenge an evasive if you needed to. But even then, you're just looking at taking out anything. I see a lot of Arthur when people run Pyros, which I believe Pyros is when you challenge and banish a character, he readies himself so he can continue to attack things over and over and over again. But Arthur just letting you take out an evasive character, letting you take out literally almost anything on the board. So it's a neat card to see. It's two of them being uninkable. That high cost is interesting, but I really like to see that kind of tech option. I love seeing Zeus in blue steel. I think Zeus just gives you so much reach in this deck, and I think that the ability to be able to clear those big bodies is incredibly important. Of course, we see the Tinkerbell, but if you'll notice, this list is not running Grab Your Sword, which is like huge. That Grab Your Swords and Tinkerbell has been a major part of blue steel for as long as I've been playing, since I can remember back at the middle of Ursula's. But we don't see it here, and I'd imagine it's because just Ursula, or not Ursula, but Grab Your Sword is only doing 2 damage, and that 2 damage it's not a lot anymore. So he's opted to cut that in favor of the Zeus, and because that'd be the major, but he's also running 4 Fire the Cannons. So as far as on inkables, I am curious now. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 on inkables, and no Fishbone Quill. So that is interesting. I would be interested to see that as well. But even how far I'll go, it's a very different list. I probably should have done 2 pages of spicy the longer I look at this list. But Ethan, really awesome list. I really like to see it. Definitely going to sleeve it up myself. Of all the lists I show off today, I think this is my favorite. This is really neat. So moving on, though, we have the CCS 10K. It was an 8K, but there were so many people that showed up, it turned into a 10K, put on by 20 Lore Pro, who did a phenomenal job. Huge shout out to them. Amazing Discord, amazing coverage, showing us really how these Lorcana events should be ran. I really believe that. Constantly having coverage, just phenomenal. But moving on, something to note, look at that. Red, purple, 48 decks showed up. Red purple is so popular in NA, and where we see 48 decks, like, that is massive. Now, something to note though, 1 ruby amethyst made day 2. Okay, that's it. 1 ruby amethyst made day 2 out of 48. So it hits home. If you're playing ruby amethyst, you have to put in the work. You have to put in a lot of practice. You have to just really put in the work and the time to getting good at it. Contact No I'm Not. Get some coaching. No I'm Not has it's a $10 guide, and it's a really good guide. Check that out. You don't have to, but just put in the time. If you do, it will reward you. This deck continues to be a menace to those who are really good at it. We saw 37 amethyst or steel song decks, or pseudo steel song decks, 36 green purple. We always have our 1 ruby steel. Remember, 1 ruby steel showed up to the LCQs in Europe. 10 blue steel, 1 amber emerald. Just a lot of amber sapphire. So no hyper aggro amber sapphire, but a really good spread. 30 ruby sapphire. So this is kind of the spread that I expected to see out of it. Pretty accurate, really. Maybe not so much green purple. That's not normally super popular in NA, but let's move on. This is what you guys are looking at. Let's move on, though, to the top decks. And first off, DeCandio coming in, taking first place a second time. If you guys remember, the last CCS 10K, he took first place with Steel Song using Lanterns. This time, using his coveted kind of Seven Dwarves Mine deck. There are a couple differences. If you guys remember, he's been using this deck for a couple months now, but he did make some changes with that were definitely really needed and really made a big difference. The biggest one, in my opinion, is the 4 Lilos. It just gave it that extra reach. You know, you're playing an aggro deck. You're seeing a lot of draw from Rapunzel. In my opinion, that's really the main draw engine. But of course, you have Doc. But that Lilo, sometimes you just don't see draw. So that Lilo just continues to put pressure on the board. And when you have mines down, you can now pay 2 to bring Lilo back and then pay 2 to move it to the mine. And then now that Lilo is popping 1 damage to something. So now if they also take out the Lilo, that Lilo did 2 damage to something. That's pretty awesome. It keeps them from taking, now they have to choose, do I take out the mine? Do I take out the Lilo? And they always have to choose the Lilo. So you just keep getting 1 lore every turn off of the mine. We see the 2 Plutos, the 4 Kitas coming in. But yeah, just it's a good list. I'd be interested. Yeah, it's a good list. We'll talk about it more in my upcoming video when we talk about Steel Song decks, but good job to Candio taking first again. So next up, we have second place with Jeremiah C at Charlie's Collectibles. And when we look at this list, it's a very typical red-blue list, but there is only 1 B prep. And I was talking about this with someone earlier. A lot of my Steel Song decks now, I'm only running 3 B preps 3 Peats, because we're seeing red-blue drop their B preps. And this is a perfect example of it, where we only see 1 B prep in this list. And when you look at a lot of red-blue lists, they're running only 1 or 2. And the reason for that is, well, a lot of it has to do with Pete, but it also has to do with the fact that green is so popular with that 2-drop Ursula, taking songs from their hand. So you just opt for other ways for removal, whether it's a Maui with the Vitalosphere, another Maui, the big Sizu, or just the ice blocks and the hand Sizus. These guys coming in, that's not a hand Sizu, baby Sizu, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's a very typical red-blue, but we're just seeing where red-blue is going. Now, I am curious where there's less discard if we are going to see red-blue at the NA LCQs and the Continentals, if we see red-blue come back to quills. Their ability to not be able to quill into this heavy removal, we saw that really bite them this weekend. So I'll be curious to see how it develops. I'm waiting on Sailor, right? That's our go-to red-blue guy. But another good list, taking second place, sest place. But good job, Jeremiah. Really happy to see you do so well. Congratulations. Next up, we have Ruben S taking third place with this extremely interesting Amber Steel deck. And you can almost call it Steel Song with how many songs it does have, 8, 9, 10, 11. Again, we'll talk about this more. It's very interesting. I have a lot of opinions about it. But overall, I'll move my face really quick so you can see that Zeus. But overall, the deck did well. He got third place. But yeah, we will talk about this in my next video, I promise. Good job though, Ruben, taking third place at a big event. Next up, we have Kindle. I think it's Burdett, otherwise known as, how I know him best is No I'm Not on the 20 Lore Discord, and he was the 20 Lore Community Pro, so every single one of his matches was streamed the other day. He was under the lights for 2 days straight, countless hours, just absolutely slaying all day long with, of course, his red purple. And there's a couple things to spice in here. When we look at this list, he's running Dragonfire and Maui's Fishhook. The Dragonfire banishing a chosen character, but the Fishhook, if you have a character named Maui in play, you may use this item's Shapeshift ability for free. Shapeshift being pay 2 ink and tap this card, exert this card, choose 1. Chosen character gains evasive until the start of your next turn. Chosen character gets +3 attack this turn. So now you play this Fishhook. And if you already have it down, your Maui comes in with evasive to take out literally anything you want, because he now has 6, 7, 8, 9 attack and he has invasive until next turn. So there's not a lot that can take him out next turn, meaning now you have this Maui that's going to be able to take out something else, or he could even sing Dragonfire. So you're that Dragonfire acting like a better Tremaine. And so this Fishhook coming in and just offering up this ability to act as a Lady Tremaine, but also act as a card that can win the Genie Wars. Now, we look at his list, we do see, speaking of Genie, only 3 of them, which again, everybody's taught. I mean, Genie's a $35 foil, right? It's a rare card that costs $35. There's Enchanteds that are cheaper than that. And then meanwhile, we see Kindle only running 3 Genies. We see 1 Bell, of course. You don't need, again, we have Brawl, so Bell's not as important as other purple decks as other purple decks. And then the 1 Sizu. So a really interesting list, a really good list. Instead of the 2 and 2 ladies, we see the Dragonfire coming in and being really good. Something to note in both the red-purple lists that I've shown today, no Half Shark. And I don't think Half Shark merits a place here. Just a little too slow for red-purple, but really good showing. I can't believe he played under the lights and on stream for so long. Like, incredibly great player. Really good job, man. Excited for whatever happens next. Next up, we have Tristex90, and I'm pretty sure this is Tristan is his name, but he got 5th place with Purple Steel. And I highlighted 2 cards here. We have the 1 of the Yzma, and if you tap, she's a 3/3/2, and when you exert her, if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, draw until you have 3 cards in hand. So she's a card that lets you draw cards. What more could you ask for in kind of a pseudo aggro list? Because we also see the Maleficent biding her time. And I highlighted that card not because it's new to Purple Steel, but because we saw 2 Purple Steel lists make top 8 at the EU Continentals, and neither one of them had Maleficent biding her times, if I remember correctly. So to see that Maleficent biding her time come in, it's just, I think it's kind of spicy. After we saw, those 2 lists do it, we see the 3 docks, just being able to draw you cards, right? The 4 roses, the 4 goats. We see the 3 Gantus, which I'm a huge lover of Gantu. I love this card. I want to fit it into anything and everything that I possibly can. And then the 3 libraries, which I think this one's a little interesting in a Purple Steel deck, especially with all these baby characters, the docks. I expect when I see a Purple Steel to run library if they are running locations. So I would be interested to hear from them, like, did you try libraries in place of castles, and what made you switch? Do you wish that you would have had ran the libraries? I don't know, just curious what his thoughts were on this one, and if he wished he would have done something differently. But the 4 cannons, the 2 befuddles, I bet if he did play any Steel Song, which I assume he did when there were so many, that these cards did a world of work for him while he could build his board and just do really nasty stuff. Because if you go like a Maleficent into a Diablo and a Fire the Cannons into a Calhoun, like, there's just so many really good plays here to really mess with the Steel Song players when there were so many that showed up that day. So good job, Tristan. Way to go. Way to do Purple Steel proud. Next up, we have Brian J. And I'd be curious if he does happen to see this video, was this actually your list? And the reason I ask is because there's no set 6 cards here, and you're on the Queen package, which we don't see a lot of anymore. I do love the Queen package, but with so much steel, and I'd be curious if this was actually the list you ran. But looking at this list, we see the 4 Ursulas, the 4 Zeuses, the 4 Queens. So you're essentially guaranteeing you can remove anything on your turn 2 if you do have Zeus, that Queen doing so much work there. We see, the 8, 9, 10, 11, 1 drops, of course, the Naveen's coming in, being able to do more Zeus work. Just a good Steel Song list, reminiscent of last set, but I bet the card we're hiding is a whole new world. But yeah, I'd be curious, was this actually your list? If it was, it awesome, man. Like, I bet it did some work being able to kill all those daisies early on. And yeah, glad it did so well. But yeah, so again, this is another list, excuse me, that we will talk about in my upcoming video. So next up, we have Robert M., known as Markoth, one of the two. Let me know, man. But he's on 20 Lore Discord. He got 8th place, and he's running the Chris Oyola special with the 2 Sonic Warriors. And when we look at this list is, when you look at it, it screams Dodge Red Blue. And he did almost the whole day until Top Cut. And unfortunately, Red Blue caught up to him in Top Cut. He had to be on the draw and unfortunately lost there. But really good list. That Sonic Warrior, he just did work all day long by just absolutely decimating all the aggro lists, like pretty much the field. And that's what this, Oyola special is looking to accomplish, is just you get Sonic Warrior down, or even if you don't, just you have so much song power here that you're just not letting your opponent play anything and keep anything on the field. 2 daisies, 1 Lilo, 1 Baloo, trying to at least play into the red blue a little bit. But really good showing, man. Really proud of you, and way to represent Steel Song. Next up, we have 2 green purple lists that EA tempo. First up is Gerald T. And when we look at Gerald T, we see a pretty regular list. We see, of course, all the 1-drops. We see the 4 bonsais opting for that route over the snakes. 2 roses and 4 goats. We see the 2 crickies, which I think the crickies is a pretty great card. I'll move my face out of the way so you can see the friends on the other side. But I really like Cricky, that ability to just trade into anything you want. And when the Genie Wars become so important, now your Cricky becomes, if you lay that down and you have a Genie down or an Elsa down, they trade into anything and they pretty much live. We see the Ursula putting in even more work, a big body that quests for 3, but also this ability to exert things and quest for 3 and exert them and challenge or do whatever you want, really. Just a good green purple list that went and did really well. I'd love to hear if you got anything more than 5 lore. I always think that's super exciting to see, as long as it's not against me. But really good job, man. And then our next one is Jack M, and he's running something a little bit different because he opted to go 2 bonsai and 3 snakes. But he also opted to go just a metric ton of 1-drops. Because if we look here, we only have 4, 8, 12. If we look here, we go 4, 8, 12, 14. So he went that super wide 1-drop route. Only 3 Go-Go's, the 2 bells, no Crickies, no big Ursulas. Just, I want to draw a whole bunch of cards. I want to lay stuff down. So I guess this is more of the aggro-esque green purple, and the other one is a little bit more tempo, maybe. But really good job, man. Way to do well. So this next one's going to look a little weird, though. We didn't have an actual deck list for this, so I'm going to call him Cran, because that's his name on Discord. That's where I found this list. He posted it in the Blurple page. They did a top 8 split at the 2K event at CCS Collectibles, and this is his list because I don't know. I guess I'm lazy and I just didn't post it on I didn't put it in my Dreamborn. But when we look at this list, I'll move my face so you can see all the cards. We got 4 Diablos, 4 Tipos, 4 Foxes, 4 Genie, 4 Goat, 4 Friends, 1 Cogsworth, which is the spicy card in this one because you just don't see a lot of it, but it does do work against Steel Song, which is a harder matchup. But the problem with Cogsworth in Blurple is that by the time you get your Cogsworth down, Steel Song is typically a little too wide for him to matter. And I'd be curious, did Cogsworth do any work for you? Was it worth it? Do you wish you would have just cut him? He can sing this 1 Let It Go down here, which is, that's cute. That's cool. He can sing Friends, but typically you're not really singing or doing much with Cogsworth in this kind of list because you need to be able to control the board, and that's what you want Cogsworth to do so your characters can live. But love to hear about that one, man. The two ducks, which huge fan of Donald Duck in Blurple. The two bells doing incredibly great work. 5 Elsas, 3 rabbits, 4 sails, 4 Churnbox followers, 2 magic brooms, so going 10 1-drops. Looks like 3, probably 4 snakes. I think that's a 4th one down there. 4 crabs, 2 and 2 on Hades and Elsa, and then 2 libraries. So just a lot of draw. It's doing what Blurple wants to do. Blurple wants to draw a lot of cards. It wants to ramp. It wants to just constantly lay down threats over and over and over again and just say, hey, you keep answering me. I'm just going to keep drawing. I'm just going to keep laying down these little threats that are going to quest 1 here, 2 there, 1 here, 3 there. And meanwhile, here's an Elsa. So now you can't do anything with 2 of your characters until the start of your next turn. Or, hey, that's a really cool shift target, or that's a really cool card. Here's a Hades, because why not? So Blurple in a really good position this set. I imagine we are going to see a lot of it at the LCQs. So if you haven't been playing into Blurple, you don't know what it looks like, make sure you do your research. But with that, that brings us to an end of our video. 31 minutes, not too bad. But again, just the point of this video is to help you get ready for your events coming up. Whether that's Set Champs that is starting on January 18th. I should have replaced these two, but Set Champs, remember, it starts on January 18th. And that weekend there, and then it rolls into February, with the last day, I believe, being February 9th, Super Bowl Sunday. So keep that in mind. Maybe there's some Super Bowl Sunday Set Champs you can go knock out because people won't be there. I don't know, just a thought. There's LCQs that start on 10 Jan for those of you that got tickets. And, of course, NA Continentals coming right after that. And then we have our next DLC in 01 February for people to get 2 Worlds invites. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any thoughts. What was your favorite deck you saw? I wish we would have seen the Amber Steel location list or the Ruby Steel list. But I think my favorite deck out of all of these has to be the Blue Steel one. I think that Blue Steel one is pretty spicy, pretty exciting, and I'm going to sleeve it up and give it a try. Until next time, guys, stick around. I'm going to have a great video on Steel Song coming up in the next couple of days. But remember, stay happy and healthy. I'll see you around.